Okay, so I guess the good place to start is with a sort of consideration. Edge, everyone's been talking about it for quite a while. Maybe just go over the, I mean, defining the edges, we could be here all day, I guess, because it means slightly different things to different people, but just a bit of background as to why there's momentum and maybe trying to get through a little bit of the hype as to what's actually happening now, as opposed to what everyone thinks might be happening now, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. We appreciate that. So at Vertiv, it's very real to us, and it's been going on for some time. What I view the underlying driver to be is just the relentless need of people to get greater value at lower cost. And digitization enables that to happen. And we can take a look at consumer, and consumer can mean things that we like to consume and things we need to consume. But I'll give just a couple of examples there. The world of retail has really changed. I do most of my shopping now, I think many of us do, on a mobile device. And that's where I do my decision research. And then if it's necessary to have a physical interaction, I can go and do that at a store. Often we don't even need that anymore. And that's from kind of a consumer view. And that has led to significant edge deployments throughout the past few years. If we go to the things we need, we take that same kind of setup, but instead of maybe clothing that I might like, it could be food that I need. And if we take a look at the way some of these grocers are managing their supply chain, managing inventory, getting efficiency on predictability, bringing down the cost of providing nutrition to people, which we have to have. So that's just one example in a vertical, retail and food retail, grocery, where it's the demand of the value from the consumer that drives competition to deliver that value at a lower cost, and digitization enables that.
And in terms of the type of data center required to meet the demands of that edge, I'm guessing it slightly depends. In the examples you've given, maybe a current sort of data center might well be able to do that because time isn't that critical, you know, whether you get to order it in, you know, 2 seconds or 5 seconds, perhaps indifferent. But there are potentially applications where latency, you know, in real time does matter. So are we looking at a potentially new type of data center to cater for certain edge applications, or can, with certain restrictions, the existing sort of ecosystem meet the demands?
I believe we're looking at the need of a new type of data center, and I believe we're already down that path. And you bring up a word of latency, which can mean different things to different consumers of that information. For example, a human consuming an experience, a buying experience from my mobile to the brick and mortar, versus maybe you're thinking of a machine-to-machine communication, which is milliseconds, and there is no time for any kind of delay. But in both of those cases, what we see being new about the data center is we have to create a space in an environment that wasn't designed to house IT typically ever. So if we look at a lot of these stores or distribution centers can be pretty new. A lot of factories can be decades old. And even the vision of what we can do today wasn't a reality in the design. So when we look at edge data centers, we can have some low density ones, and those tend to be in the retail examples that I shared, to higher density, higher speed, higher capacity, more industrialized, going into manufacturing environments, from automotive to pharmaceutical down the line.
So, in terms of that edge data center, again, depending on the application, we're talking about anything from I guess a reasonable sized building if there's a lot of activity. And I know the classic example is the autonomous vehicle, where apparently we're going to have kiosks, you know, on virtually every street corner, you know, receiving and giving out information. So in terms of the types of design, is there a sort of portfolio of edge approved designs, or are we still kind of evolving to meet these different needs?
I think that's a great concept. And you talked a little bit before about the hype, and sometimes there's just a grand vision or a grand expectation that overnight a killer app is going to dawn, and we will wake up to just a mega structure, block by block of data center interactions, and that's what I feel is a little bit of the hype part. Getting back to your earlier question of just the speed to which we're getting there. Eventually, those will have an environment like that. But right now, yes, we are seeing and developing data centers that are purpose-built for specific environments with tailor capability to meet the exact need. One of the things we've shared recently is a mechanism that we use, a methodology we use to help customers understand, help us jointly understand their needs so we can deploy efficiently, called decoding the edge. And we walk through a few approaches to solving the edge, and to your point earlier, defining what edge means to these customers. I'm happy to go in a little bit of detail there if it would help.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps you can give us one or two examples.
Sure.
I mean, we've obviously referenced, I think, various needs for edge, but in terms of walking, through a customer as to helping them, yeah, that would be good.
Absolutely, great. So first, what we've learned over the past years serving our customers is there are patterns emerging in their deployment needs, and they tend to be associated with verticals. The verticals aren't unique in every aspect, but there are strong associations. So what we see these deployment patterns, the first thing we want to do is understand the footprint. They have an edge need. Okay, so what does that look like physically? And we see really four categories emerging. One is geographically dispersed. So if you think of a supermarket chain where there will be hundreds or thousands of locations, roughly similar size, roughly similar needs, but maybe different electrical hookups, electrical service, security needs, etc. So that's one, geographically dispersed. Next, we have hub and spoke. We see this a lot with retail distribution, logistics, and communications, where there is a bit of a centralized, larger data center, and then what we'd consider smaller nodes going around it and extending the reach. That's the way Amazon built out their distribution network. Next, we've got locally concentrated, and we see these in campus settings, for example. So your production facility, where we see car manufacturers with basically a localized brain that manages millions of execution actions with robots spread around a campus. And to reach these robots and communicate with them and manage the entire flow of the facility, there will be a large network of much smaller individual micro data centers that often are heavy networking focused that manage this communication. We'll see the similar in healthcare or any kind of campus environment. Different type of speed and IT application in healthcare versus manufacturing, but it's still a locally concentrated edge deployment. And finally, we have self-sustaining frontier. So when we see customers, so a cloud provider, if you can pick a Microsoft does an edge deployment, it's going to look, it's going to have the feel of a larger data center, but to a cloud provider, it's edge. If we look at a corporate example, it might be disaster recovery, where a single prefabricated module, 100 kW, can be placed somewhere in a geographic area that relieves their risk.
Okay, so bearing in mind those slightly disparate sort of requirements, you got Vertiv, you've launched a micro data center, the VRC-S. So is that able to sort of cater for all those needs, or is it focusing on, you know, one or two in particular? And just, yeah, I say, how easy is it to design a micro data center to meet every single requirement that you've you know outlined up there?
We appreciate that. I appreciate that, and that question, because it's not easy. If it were easy to make one, it would just make an edge box, then it would have been done, and that's all people would buy. But what we've done is provide something that's I think increases the level of simplicity along the lines of deployment management for a couple of those deployment those segments. Specifically. So where we see them being applied is in the geographically dispersed, so with retail, and in locally concentrated, so manufacturing. So if we take a look at those segments that I talked about before, each will have different requirements depending on the exact location. So we can understand with the customer what the footprint looks like physically. And then those footprint locations will each have their own characteristics, so we can segment them. What the VRC-S has made it easy to do is cover a wide range of those final locations with a single set of configurations, and we can tailor what needs to be tailored for the exact fit.
Okay, and in terms of the actual solution, because a lot of edge solutions are delivered, I guess, in containerized, so there's sort of one size and get on with it, and they may even be pre-populated with kit. Is that your approach, or is it more flexible and open for people? And if it's not too much in the same question, just to ask, can you sort of compare and contrast your approach with maybe some of the other, you know, approaches that are being taken?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we at Vertiv, one of the things that we've learned is customers want the exact solution to their IT capacity need, and they want it delivered at scale in a simple manner, but they don't want to pay for things they don't need. So what we've done with the VRC-S is put together, and I'll go a little just slightly technical here, the rack with integrated cooling, the rack power distribution, backup ventilation, all powered by a UPS that is pre-packaged in the factory, pre-integrated, pre-wired and tested, and ships as a single unit. So we have a range of sizes that a customer can select. The final selection is CE marked. So it's something that makes it easy for them to manage their risk in how they manage their business. So this can be selected, shipped on site, and all that needs to happen is a IP connection and a power connection, and you put the exhaust heat where you want it to go, and you're up and running. And that simplicity is what is unique in the industry. There's a few other things that our offering has that is advanced in the industry. So first, that entire package, single IP address. So as we're talking about customers managing costs, managing complexity, managing security risk, you can do that whole thing with one IP address. If you have multiple ones, you can remotely upgrade and remotely upgrade the firmware across the whole fleet that you've got. It's treated as a single item. So in the US, sometimes if we buy a car, we'll have, well, one warranty on the drivetrain, warranty on the battery, this warranty over here. We make it simple, and we cover with a complete package warranty of 3 years. So it just feels like a simple single unit that's being purchased. Finally, the way we have made it easy to understand Some of the advantages is we've developed an AR app, an augmented reality app, which of course we should if we're supporting edge deployments. But what that does is it makes it easy for the customer to literally place a actual size unit in their environment and then see how the functionality of the solution offers protection against power outage, against loss of cooling, et cetera, in a way that's very digestible for people even who are non-technical. So our objective there is to really simplify the process of understanding how this can solve a need for a customer, understanding how some of the functionality is different from what's available elsewhere in the market, and then standardizing on things that will either work right out of the box or something that Vertiv does very well with a combination of customization capability for the rack and PDU level and service coverage geographically. We've done this for very large customers. We will standardize on a set of customized solutions for them. So the off-the-shelf that doesn't work for, say, it might work for a couple of hundred of their deployments, but not the other few hundred or other thousand. Went into a little bit of maybe an extended detail there, but that's what we were looking to accomplish with the VRC-S, and we're very happy with it.
And just a couple of things in terms of the modularity, because I mean, one of the characteristics of the world these days is it's fast moving. So you might buy yourself an edge data center for today's needs, and then 6 months later think, oh, we need some more, or we need to reconfigure. So how flexible, I guess, is the solution? And also in terms of the component parts, is there you mentioned a customization. So I'm thinking if someone has to have a certain UPS in or a certain cabinet manufacturer, are you able to sort of accommodate those requirements depending on what your customers are asking for?
Absolutely. So we can change and adapt and customize really any portion of the offering. And if we talk about a single rack offering, which the VRC-S is designed around, a single micro data center, one rack, those tend to be capped at the design stage by the physical space, so U space, and the power inside, so the UPS. What we've done with the VRC-S is create the ability, and we picked a design point that is by far the most common that we've seen in our deployments, and allowed customers the flexibility of what options to cover within that package. Beyond that, we do have more scalable options where we will customize the outside of the unit to provide the protection that they're looking for. We can provide options with regard to power capacity, cooling capacity, expand in a row design, and up to an aisle. And we see those deployments at the edge consistently as well.
In terms of moving forward, I think I can't remember the exact, but I think Gartner it is that's suggesting that up to 75% of all sort of enterprise data is going to be created, processed, whatever, at the edge by, I don't know, mid-2020s. So I'm just wondering, the data center, like a lot, I guess, like computing, we've had distributed, then centralized, distributed. Are we back to I've written about data center consolidation for the last God knows how long. Am I right thinking that we're now back to a more distributed model, or is it a sort of hybrid, a mixture of centralized? And how do you characterize the way forward in terms of that infrastructure architecture?
Yeah, I see it being a hybrid. And here's why. Yeah, okay, so let's go with the number you started with. I think you said 74% or 75% of the data will be generated at the edge by, was it 2025?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so not all of that data will be valuable. right? So a lot of it will just be repeated status given by sensors of things that didn't change. What the valuable part of that data streams will be things that did change or things that require immediate action. And the applications that are being written now, have been written, will continue to be written, are getting more and more edge native. So to your point, it enhances the distribution model of distributed data centers, but they're being designed and these applications are being written with the cloud already in existence. So things that don't necessarily, I'll say, IT applications and data transactions that don't drive immediate action required, like in our manufacturing setting. Those are still the big data consumption, the analysis across that can aggregate across, say, a global footprint of a manufacturing company. Those are still best done in the cloud. I don't see the cloud being replaced by a distributed environment. My personal view is we'll have a hybrid environment.
And in terms of that hybrid environment, we're talking about a mixture of, I mean, people will still have some on-premises data center requirement, colo, and then the cloud, and then we're having there's still these large centralized data centers. Then I guess levels of edge, we can argue about, you know, how many of the definitions as we've discussed. But so it's going to be a real mix of a lot of resources that need managing. So I guess if it's not unfair to put you on the spot, how does Vertiv, I guess, see its role in helping people create the optimized hybrid environment, if that makes sense?
Yes, yeah, it does, and I certainly appreciate the question. Our role, the way we see our role, is we enable the customers to have the infrastructure where they need it to most efficiently deliver the experience they're looking to deliver. So whether they're going to go through basically an IT assessment of cloud hybrid applications, where they would be best fit, take into account security, redundancy, performance, and that will result in an asset location that's ideal for what they want to deliver, that experience they want to deliver. Our role is to make sure that we are there, both from a physical infrastructure perspective and a service perspective, remote and on-site, to facilitate the deployment in the footprint that makes sense for them. So for someone who wants to go to colo, we make that transition easy with the ability to fill out white space in a very effective manner, cost effective and high quality. If they need a hybrid, colo, on-prem, edge, we have a simple solution set that covers the range. We're there with the monitoring capability, and our geographic service coverage is second to none. So we can, our role in the advisory stage of that has to do with, say, the cost associated with developing each of those, the ability to provide redundancy in the manner that they're looking to achieve. And we see a lot of customers looking more and more at the sustainability aspects of those footprint decisions. So we will help them understand the impacts on each of those. But the end result for us, we try to be neutral, because we want to be able to support them whether they go very large data center, mid-size, or edge, or what we see a lot of is all three.
And just in that process, I mean, you described the process. They obviously got to work out what kind of infrastructure they wish to create. So if they come to you and say, we want, you know, this, and this, will you sort of happily take the order and do that, or will you maybe push back? Will you, I guess what I'm saying is how early in that decision making, if they came to you and said, look, we think we need some edge data centers, can you help us? Do you offer that sort of consultancy role that early on in their decision making?
With the network of partners, we do. So I would say the answer to that question depends on the scale of the deployment being done, number one. And number two, how integrated of a solution the end user is looking to acquire. Okay, so I'll give kind of two ends of the spectrum. For very large deployments, be they large buildings or very large edge deployments, we'll work with the customer and our partner network on what technology makes sense for cooling, for example. The rollout schedule, project management, what needs to be customized, what can be taken right off the shelf. Very high level of engagement. On the other end, there are smaller projects where all the customer wants is something simple. Just make my decision easy, give me something that shows up rapidly so I can get on with my business. So the answer to your question really depends on the scale. Did I address your question there?
Yeah, no, that's good. And maybe just in sort of concluding, it'd be good, for a lot of people, I think we started the conversation, aware of edge. There's, everyone's heading to the edge, all these marvelous, new ways of doing stuff. Cutting through some of that, sort of marketing stuff. What one or two bits of advice would you give people who are, aware of it and how it can potentially, benefit their business? What do they need to look at in that process?
Let's see. So I can speak just to the experience we've had in the benefit we've had in supporting our customers. Our customers are delivering improvements to the standard of living, improvements to the quality of life by making things we need to live more readily accessible at a lower cost, higher quality, higher freshness in a lot of cases, right? And they're bringing communication capability to areas of the world and segments in different different locations that didn't exist at any scale that could support even the media that you and I are using now. So my humble advice to edge people who are thinking about edge and supporting it from a hardware or software perspective is to keep that in mind. Focus on what the customer is trying to accomplish. At Vertiv, we want to power the critical IT applications that run the digitized world. It's not about our product necessarily. Our job is to make sure that our customers deliver the experience they want for their users, the users of their applications. And our job is to make that a continuous process. We like to think of ourselves as the architects of continuity. So the advice to people thinking about edge, just focus on that customer need and focus on the application, not the hardware itself, supporting the application.
Okay, that's great. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. So Alex, thanks very much indeed for your time. Appreciate it.
Philip, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, and we appreciate, as always, the opportunity to speak.